right, Brad, you ever see those things where they talk about how if you price Coca-Cola at a per gallon basis, it would be worth more than oil, and there's a reason why Coca-Cola is a multi-billion-dollar company.
Yeah.
So I would like to posit, I have not done the math on it, but that the weight of Legos per pound is in the thousands of dollars if you bought it by little sets, right?
Oh my God, yeah. If you if you bought it by the ounce, it would be like cocaine.
Right, yes, exactly. So as a parent, you might be a little bit past your Lego stage, but we are in our house, are full bore in our Lego stage. And good God, it's like handing money right to the drug pusher. You're like, here's another $100 I got 6 pieces in this box. Great, thank you, Lego. How generous of you.
And it's all about the minifig. I mean, my son is 12 going on 13, and he was out of the Lego phase, and then Infinity Wars got him right back in, and he's already bought 2. He's with his grandparents in New York City right now, and they've already posted on Facebook they've got him at the Lego store, so he's coming home with another. But and he does build them, but it's all about those freaking little minifigs.
Yeah, it's all the licensed stuff too. That's the kicker.
Yeah.
And that, I got to tell you, that little Lego Thanos is pretty adorable with his little Lego gauntlet. It's pretty cute. Anyway, so I was getting frustrated because I'm a little bit of a cheapwad. I was getting frustrated by how much I was dropping on Lego. And so I was like, you know what? I'm going to go on Craigslist because there must be a family somewhere that their kid just turned 15, 16, 17, and they want to get rid of Legos, right?
Yeah.
And so, sure enough, like 2 seconds on Craigslist, I look on there and they're like, there's like 19 listings. Like, dear God, take these Legos off our hands. Our kid just went to college, right? So there's one kid though that I was like, oh, this is a good cause. He's like, I'm saving up to buy myself a computer. I'm 16 now, and I'm selling all my old Legos from my childhood. And Brad, it was 20 pounds of Legos.
Wow.
It was like, those kind of like plastic buckets you get at Target when you're like putting all your Christmas supplies back in, and you're like, well, we need to go buy another bucket, a lidded bucket, whatever those things are called.
Yeah.
It was 2.5 of those. And I'm not kidding, they weighed a bajillion pounds. Like, when you lift up Legos and it weighs physically 20 pounds, you're like, good God, there's a lot of Legos. So here's where the story gets interesting, because I was like, all right, great. I just saved myself a bunch of money by buying 20 pounds of Legos. But then I was like, oh, I can't just let the kids play with them. I got to wash them first, because, like, these could be covered in hepatitis. Just dripping in E. coli. Just 6 pounds of human feces on these Legos. Like, who knows what these have gone through.
Oh, my God.
So... but Brad, oh my God, the process of trying to wash 20 pounds of Legos.
Oh.
Once I started, I couldn't just stop. I became a man possessed about, like, I gotta wash these Legos.
But now wait a minute. To properly wash a Lego, if you're gonna go down that road, do you just dump them in bleach? Or do you take a toothpick and get into all those nooks and crannies? I mean, how do you wash a Lego?
The nooks and crannies are a lost cause. I admitted to myself that the nooks and crannies are a lost cause. But here's what I did. You know those little, they're called salad spinners? You, like, put your wet salad in and you spin it around?
Yeah. Oh, God.
I half filled that with soapy water, poured in Legos, and then went and spun them around.
The loudest thing ever.
Oh, it was amazing. But then I would hit the brakes, because it has like a little air brake on it, like a little button air brake, and then the Legos all go, and they all slow down again. And then you spin them up again, and then, and then I would wash them, and my wife was like, what is wrong with you? You are wasting so many. Just go out and buy the Legos at this point. Like, why are you wasting weeks on this? So this process started a year ago, and I'm just this week finishing washing the 20 pounds of Legos.
Oh, my God. So
it is ridiculous.
So now are the kids playing with them? That's the question.
Yeah, the big kid is, being me. I'm super back into Legos. It's really fun. My father-in-law, he had me dead to rights. He's like, I'm like, oh, yeah, I bought these 20 pounds of Legos for the kids. And he looks at me and goes, yeah, the kids.
The kids.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, don't you hate it when somebody who knows you a little bit too well just cuts right to the source?
Yeah, he who worked an honest living his whole life, every once in a while he'll walk into my studio and be like, what are you doing?
Yeah,
like, what is your day? I'm like, I'm drawing something.
Yeah, that's cool. We got out of Legos and we're right back in, and it's funny because now, see, the son that's really into it, He really has kind of the brain of an engineer, and he's getting away from building according to the plan, and now he's starting to come up with his own things. Like he noticed one time that I needed an iPhone stand, and he built me an iPhone stand out of Legos. That worked really well, and that's awesome. What I like to see. That's the thing that I like to see about Legos.
All right, well, on that note, my friend, we should welcome everybody and say hello and welcome to Comic Lab, the show about making comics and, I guess, Legos.
And making a living from comics. I'm Brad Geiger, editor of webcomics.com and cartoonist of Evil Inc.
And I'm Dave Kellett, his Lego-washing friend, cartoonist of Drive and Sheldon, and co-director of Stripped.
And this week's Hour of Comics Advice is made possible by your support at patreon.com/comiclab.
And Bradley J., we have a sponsor this week, do we not?
Oh, we've got such a sponsor. I'm so thrilled to welcome our sponsor, who does a comic called Ashley at ashleycomics.com. It's a comic about Ashley and her friends having fun, comical adventures in a world where fantasy often becomes reality. So do check that out, and we're thrilled to have Ashley as a sponsor of Comic Lab.
And Bradley J., how are you this week? What's going on in Brad Geiger's life? What's trickling around in Brad Geiger's brain?
There's been a lot of bad in that I had yet another trip to the bank as of Sunday, this past Sunday. So what's today? Tuesday. As of 4 days ago, you remember when this long national nightmare began with my bank situation. As of 4 days ago, I finally got everything back to normal. I got my bank account back, I got online access back, and I finally, after all this time, they said my debit card was in the mail, and that was untrue. And so I got a debit card. I was able to once again access money from my account. So that's that. All of that was bad. The good part came a couple days later when I had my first real chance to use my debit card. And that's because I was having dinner with the loquacious and delightful Danielle Corsetto.
She's down in Philadelphia?
She's doing this whole tour for that big GWS collection, that huge hardcover collection she kickstarted that went through the roof. So now she's going to all these. She's so awesome. She's got guts like I don't got. She's going to all these places on a book tour that she kind of made up, mainly so she could visit friends and stuff. And so she's driving around mainly East Coast and Midwest areas. And like she started around Philadelphia, and she had her signing out at Amalgam Comics on Frankfurt. And she did like a 4-hour book signing. And then she stayed, she's got family in Philadelphia. And then she was kind enough to have dinner with me. And so we were able to catch up on all kinds of stuff. She could tell me how much she loves my co-host for podcasts, and that was nice to hear. Big fan of Scott Kurtz and Creative and Surviving Creativity.
You bastard! You delightful bastard!
If I hadn't stuttered, it would have been funny. No, she's told me how much she really does love you and really likes the show. So yeah, that was the high point was being able to have dinner with Danielle.
Well, can I tell you? I know we had not talked about this before, so I'm springing this on you. But let's talk for a second about her book, because she made this really massive double hardcover foiled embossed Girls with Slingshot book, right? And I would think, Brad, it's probably, I'm just guesstimating, it's probably around 1,000 pages, between the two tomes.
Yeah. Ginormous.
Anyway, it's massive. And the thing that I am so impressed of, and it's actually something that I am afraid of in my own career, is she has done that. Sam Logan has done that with that giant Sam and Fuzzy collection. Mm-hmm. And there's a few other people that have made those giant hardcover multi-volume books, and they scare the hell out of me in terms of producing them.
Yeah, it is a fantasy of mine. Like, I would love to do that with Evil Inc. and just take it right back to not like the annual report books where I redesigned the strips and made them into graphic novels. Just taking it right back to strips and just going boom, 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 boom with the strips. The problem is, I don't know that I'd be willing to pay all that much for the color versions. I would almost be tempted to make mine black and white and just do the black and white line art.
Yeah, I mean, so I'm of two minds of this, because on one level, I love the idea of being a completist and having like every Sheldon in one book, right?
Yes.
But on another level, I've grown old enough now, and there's 4,000 Sheldons in the archives, where I'm like, a third of those, if I never saw them again, I'd be fine with it, you know?
Yep.
So
yep.
I don't know that I need to, but if you're going to do a book like that, you kind of have to be a completist. You can't be like, except it's all the Sheldons except the first 5 years, you know, that kind of thing. You can't
yeah,
do that.
if you're going to do it, you got to go all in.
Yeah. So maybe sometime before I pass this mortal coil, I'll be like, I want to do a complete Sheldon, but I don't know. There's my own self-doubt, I guess, or critique of my work. It's like, nah, that first couple of years isn't worth a complete collection.
Well, and on my side, like I did that with Greystone Inn.
You did,
and
yeah.
it was print on demand, but since they were black and white, the print quality was as good as anything you're going to get in like a process.
I remember that book, by the way, as being beautiful. For those that are wondering about print on demand, yeah.
And it was a hardcover, beautifully printed. I mean, and the price point for a hardcover that was again, that was close to 1,000 pages, I think. But it was a lot, and at the price point was right down there. It never really sold big. Yeah, you know, it wasn't a big seller, and so the other fear I've got is that I put together this entire Evil Inc. complete collection and nobody cares.
It's crickets. Yeah, that Kickstarter is you and your mom and
yeah. Well, you got about 50% more than the people that would have actually done it.
Oh, Brad, I'm so proud of you, my son. I've bought 2 copies, one for me. Yeah, one for me and one for Mrs. Mistopheles. I got everyone. Yeah, it's the hardcover. And by the way, we should mention that kind of one of the dirty little secrets in publishing is that as expensive as it is to put together a thick, say, 300-page book, it's not that much more expensive to do a hardcover 300-page book. And yet the price point from a consumer standpoint, you can go considerably higher, but it's not that much more to produce, you know?
Here's your pro tip. Now, if you're going to go down that road, you approach an actual offset printer, right? This is not a print-on-demand deal. This is going serious. And you order 1,000 books, for example, and you tell them to split the run and make it half of them paperback and half of them hardcover. They're printing the same guts. So they're only printing those pages one run, and then half of them they're going to bind hardcover, half of them they're going to bind paperback. You cut your costs considerably that way. And then in the Kickstarter, you don't even say anything about the hardcover until that Kickstarter goes or gets close to going. And then you make your first stretch goal. Everybody who's got a paperback gets automatically upgraded to hardcover. Yep. No skin off your nose. Now you've got hardcovers that going out to your backers, making them feel great. And also spurring more pledges on your Kickstarter. And you've got a whole slew of paperback to put into distribution.
And Brad, since you mentioned ProTips, we haven't mentioned this in a long time. I should bring it up to folks. For Patreon backers at the $5 level and up, we do a ProTip episode every week that's just an exclusive. So we haven't mentioned this in a while, so it's worth repeating. It's just entirely tips like Brad just had right there, where it's entirely actionable. Wouldn't you say that's the way to describe that podcast? It's actionable steps that you can take at the 101 level and at the pro level.
Yep, and it's not a lot of Dave and I dicking around. It's a lot of, it's just boom, boom, boom. Here's 4 tips that you can put into use right now. And the neat thing, the reason that I think it was kind of smart for us to include 101 level, Dave, was because what happens so often, you'll say, so here's a 101 level tip, and I'll sit there and go, oh my God. I didn't know that. What you thought was 101 level, I didn't even know. Or it's something that, and this happened just recently. Dave, you are responsible for a huge jump in art quality of mine, because that idea you said about flipping the art, flipping it horizontally, to look for problems with proportions and stuff like that. I always knew to do that, but it was like way in the back of my head. Mm-hmm. I started putting that into practice. My stuff looks way better. You just catch all of these dumb little mistakes you're making because you're seeing it again for the first time. Yeah. And but the nice thing about ProTips is it's 15 minutes of just here's 4 things you can put into action. Bang, 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 and out.
Yeah. And I love that week to week, some of it's art, some of it's business, some of it's writing, some of it's how to balance a creative life. It's all actionable steps. But anyway, so we haven't mentioned that in a while. So for $5 backers on ProTip, go check out the ProTips episodes on patreon.com/comiclab.
Absolutely. So, Dave, what do you want to tackle for our first question this week?
Well, my friend, I have looked far and wide, and I have a $5 question for you from one of our backers, yeah?
That sounds good.
So it's about creation versus learning, and here's the question. I brainstorm, I draw, and I post a comic every day. I have a full-time job, 9 to 5, and a personal life. Girlfriend, dog, friends. Listen to him bragging. Listen to the bragging.
Yeah, I've got a girlfriend.
I get it. I get it. You're Mr. Popular. No, I'm just kidding. I don't know where I'm going with that joke.
He's got a girlfriend and friends.
I just like that. It's like the equivalent of me in high school. Like, I absolutely have a girlfriend. She's just in Kansas. Her modeling. She's got to travel a lot. Anyway, let me start over on this question. I brainstorm, draw, and post a comic every day. I have a full-time 9 to 5 and a personal life, girlfriend, dog, friends. I use most of my time. I have a bunch of books on comics creation I would like to read, but it always seems to be the thing that gets pushed. Is the creation itself more important, or should I shift some of that time to learning the craft, business, marketing, theory? Brad, this is a great, great question. What are your thoughts on this?
A couple of things come to mind immediately. And the first is that if you're doing the craft of comics well, there should be learning that goes along with that process. Your doing should involve a certain amount of learning. But that's kind of skirting the issue. What this person is really asking is, am I spending enough time on the learning? And the answer for me is it doesn't. If you're telling me that you want to spend more time, that you can't spend more time, then it's telling me that on some level you feel you need to spend more time. And if you're doing a comic a day,
what? Explain that.
Spending more time learning.
Learning, okay, yeah.
With the learning part. And if you're doing a comic a day, again, going back to a central theme that we've had on this show since January, there's no need for that. Unless you're making serious money on advertising, unless you're getting serious returns on that daily schedule, you could throttle that back to 3 days a week and open up 2 days of learning a week. And I don't think it would hurt you. I don't think it would be a detriment. In fact, it might be a positive, because that time you spend learning might be improving those 3 days that you are doing cartooning.
Yep.
So I say the reason you wrote this question is because on some level you think you need more learning. And if that's the case, then I say you don't need to post every day unless you're somebody who's getting significant income from that daily posting, which is possible. If you're getting something significant out of that, then you've got to regroup. But if you're not, go back to 3 days a week, hit those things on social media, and give yourself for the next couple of months 2 days that you just dedicate to learning, and see what happens. Worst comes to worst, I'm full of shit, and you go back to daily.
It's funny. I came at this from a totally different vantage than you did, and I think this is good. So I immediately, because I'm recording from my podcast closet, Brad, right? And my entire bookshelf is right in front of me. And it just so happens that all the how-to books, the shelf that has all the how-to books is right in front of me. And so it's Reinventing Comics, Making Comics, the Encyclopedia of Cartooning Techniques, How to Tell a Story by Mark Twain, the Webcomics Handbook, the Everything Cartooning Book, the Cartoonist Muse, the Artist Handbook, Arts and Numbers, the Aesthetics of Comics. Like, I literally have 30 how-to books on comics. The DC Comics Guide to Creating Comics. I have every book you could have on making comics. Now ask me how many of those I've read more than 10 pages of.
Oh, you are so good to be honest, because I'm in the same boat.
I tell you what, I read the Webcomics Handbook cover to cover, as you know, but every other book, 10 pages. And then I'm like, I got to get back to work.
Yeah. Yeah. So would you say that you find yourself maybe in the same boat as our question asker?
Oh my God, question asker. Stop saying question asker. You can take the boy out of the Midwest. Now, would you say that the question asker has a good question for the question asker? Oh, sure. Anyway, so I would say to our questioner that if my life is any model, that maybe the action of drawing is in itself an instructive teacher, and that if you have to split the time. Here's what I tend to do, and this is the honest truth. I'm looking at these books, and I said I only read a few pages of most of them, and that's true. But there are a few that I read all the way through. And here's what I do. If I have a flight and I don't want to draw on the flight because it's crampy sometimes on a flight or you're just tired, or if you have a vacation, those are great times to bring one how-to book. And you'd be like, what tips can I get out of this? But the daily grind of me being a cartoonist, Scott Kurtz once said this to us, and I thought it was such a truism, that basically we teach ourselves by giving ourselves something to draw every day or every week that we've never done before, and that's our challenge. It's basically like an art teacher saying, all right, now draw this statue. You know how they give little lessons in art school? Is that when you're a cartoonist, you give yourself something every week that's new and different, and that's how I think I learn.
Yeah, and that's great for art. The problem is it's not so good for something like that he's also listing there that includes marketing, social media, business, and stuff like that. You know what?
Yes, I guess I glossed over that part of the question. Thank you for pointing that out. Yes. So here's what I would do, because it's easy and fun to do. If you want a really quick primer lesson on business and you don't necessarily want to read a lot of business books, and Brad, you can correct me on this and tell me that I'm wrong, but I think a great primer on saving, on investing, on priorities financially is the Susie Orman Show, which I haven't watched in like a decade. So I don't know if it's still good or not. She was a little crazy even 10 years ago. Maybe she's gotten more crazy now. But she does a great job of giving you a primer on financial priorities, how to plan out, that sort of thing. So for that, that's one show that I would recommend that she does a good job with early financial advice. And then marketing, you go, Brad. What would be your advice there?
What you just said is, I think, leading towards something that I'm really going to get excited about, and that is that so far this person has said a lot about books and stuff, and there is a way for you to combine and double up on some of that stuff, because if you're like me, you like to listen to stuff while you're inking. Like you can't have an audiobook playing in your ears when you're brainstorming, right? And for me, I find it a little bit hard to have when I'm penciling. But when I'm inking, that's a mechanical process. Now all the heavy lifting's been done, and I'm just getting into the zone and making lines that look attractive and so forth. Then that's when Netflix comes out. And that's, if it's anything like the last couple of months, I'm entranced, at least audially, by one of these documentaries about somebody that's been charged with a crime he didn't commit and ends up going to jail for 18 years. There's so many of those on Netflix right now, and I'm enthralled by each one of them. So if I'm inking, I'm probably listening to one of those. And
I love the fact that this guy's like, how can I learn more marketing and business? And Brad's like, I tell you what, Netflix, I've been listening to Zombies from the Moon. It's a great show. It's I've been learning a lot.
I'm saying you could use your time better than me. But you could, all of this stuff that you're talking about, not necessarily art books, where you're talking about the creation of art and something visual, but social media, marketing, business, all of that stuff, that could be something that you do with an audio book, right?
No, absolutely. So it's funny that I, without even thinking about it, I had mentioned Susie Orman, because I realized I used to listen to her when I was drawing. And maybe that's why I had flashed back to that memory of it. But so combining really good marketing podcasts or business podcasts or...
that's another one, podcasts.
Well, that's what I mean. Yeah. Well, yeah. I thought that's where you were headed too.
I was going audiobooks, but it's two. Both of them are good.
Yeah.
Mine's a little bit better than yours, but they're both good.
Yeah, and can I tell you, you're already on the right path with this podcast, Comic Lab. That's really, it's just two winning hosts with amazing smiles that
You're making good choices. So just continue that. You're making very good choices.
Well, let's move on to question number 2, Brad. If you think we tackled that one sufficiently.
Yeah.
Alrighty. So question number 2. This is one to me. All right, let's see what this one says. So Dave mentioned focusing on getting an increase of 10% Patreon subscribers for a period of time. I believe he also said he'd achieved that goal. Dave, what was your method? How do you do a Patreon drive? So, Brad, do you want to answer that question?
Yeah, I'm just going to sit in the corner and stew, if you don't mind.
Well, okay. So first comes the slightly haughty sounding answer, because this is the truth. Mm-hmm. The first thing you do is you start working on Drive in 2009, and you start because this is important to mention, and you start working on Sheldon in 1998, building up an audience. Yeah. Because think about it. I didn't ask any of those people for Patreon for the first however many years there, right? There was there was no ask. It was a lot of free comics. I was building up a relationship. I was giving them a comic for free that they could enjoy. And then, I don't remember what year, it started in 2009. When did Patreon come around? 2015?
Earlier than that, 2013 or 2014 in there.
Well, I've only been on for about 3.5 years. So let's just put it this way. There was 6 years there where Drive, no ask. You could read it for free, no problem, no guilt, no nothing. And then in 2015, I said, hey, I would like to make Drive a bigger part of my income. If you would like that to be, or a bigger part of my career, if you would like that to be the case too, maybe you'd consider giving on Patreon. Mm-hmm. Big jump. I got up to, I don't know how many people it was, 600, 700 people. But then about around January, I made the switch, just to give you the full story, I made the switch from going per comic update to per monthly update. And as I told Brad at the time, what that meant is I needed to up my patron count because my dollar per patron amount was going down because I had made the switch. Mm-hmm. So, and in a long-term way, in the long game, it's safer to have more patrons giving less money than it is to have less patrons giving more money. Because if you have one Swiss sugar daddy that gives up on you, then there goes $50 a month. You know, it's better to have 50 $1 people working normal jobs than one Swiss sugar daddy. I say Swiss sugar daddy because, Brad, there's a couple guys in Northern Europe that buy a lot of my art, and I always joke around with Beth in the studio that they're my Swiss sugar daddies. Anyway, so how did I do that specific 10%? Okay, so the thing is, for Kickstarter, you have a 30-day period, right, Brad? And you prep for it. Yep. You get all the graphics ready. You plan out how you're going to do it. You don't just jump right into it. You get price points. You assign reward goals and all that sort of stuff. So when you're getting ready to make a big push on Patreon, take a moment, create a lot of graphics, both for your Patreon page itself, things that you can tweet, things that are ready to go for Facebook size or for Instagram size. Just take a second to get that ready. Mm-hmm. And then have another look at your reward tiers, as Brad always says. And then for 30 days, let everybody know in every capacity that you share your work, that you are on Patreon, and this is a great way to support the art, and in fact, the best way to support the art, and they can do it for the price of a cup of coffee and all, et cetera, all the standard stuff. And by merely letting it be known in every channel for 30 days, I was able to get that 10% growth in, I don't know what it was, 2 months, 2.5 months.
But you planned for that. In other words, that was a specific 30-day push that you spent maybe a couple months planning for prior to that, so that when the clock started, you had a bunch of stuff just ready to go. You weren't making this up as you went along. You were doing it according to a plan that you had thought out.
Exactly. Also, I can't emphasize it enough. You have to go to all the channels that you share it. If you email people your comic, then the Patreon call out has to be right underneath the email image. Or if you tweet the comic, you have to have another whole little separate call out for the Patreon thing. And if you Facebook the comic, I mean, you get where I'm going with this. Yeah. Is that you can't trail off and you can't shy away. And the reason why you can't trail off is because, as Brad pointed out in a previous episode, or either it was a ProTips episode or a Comic Lab, I don't remember, where the classic advertising model, if someone needs to be exposed to it 7 times before they even think about taking action. Yeah. So you need to really, for the first couple times that you're sharing Patreon with them, they're going, huh? What is this guy on about? I don't know. And then the 5th or 6th time, they're like, well, maybe I'll click through. What is this? And then it's going to take them reading a Patreon page most of the time and going away. Do you know what I mean, Brad? You have to read about it, see, like, what is this thing? And then you'll find it'll percolate in your reader's mind a day or two, and then they'll come back. And then sometimes they'll percolate, but they're like, I don't have the money, but in 3 months when I get that new job, I'm coming back. But for those people, you still got to be reminding. So
right, because they're going to forget. They're going to go on to other things.
Yeah, exactly. So you can't let your shyness let you pull back from advertising Patreon, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Brad, now you go for a little bit about your techniques about how you've grown Evil Inc.
Well, I want to go back and redirect, Your Honor. And what you said earlier, you said, well, first, go back to 1998 and create Sheldon and create, go back to, what did you say, 2012 and create Drive?
2009.
2009. I want to redirect because you're coming close to a fallacy that a lot of younger web cartoonists have. And so I want to kind of say that in a different way. In other words, there's a lot of people who take a look at you, for example, and say, well, of course he's successful today. He started back in 2000 when it was so much easier to be successful. There was a lot less signal to noise problems like we have now. And they disregard the fact that you came up and did this without social media. They've got kind of rose-colored glasses. And we've heard this before, going back to the Webcomics Weekly days. Well, of course, Scott is successful because he started, and everybody that started back then is successful, which is, of course, a fallacy. So what I want to redirect you is to say it's not necessarily going back to 1998. It means you need to start now and put the work in for a couple of years and build that audience, because Patreon is not the place you go to find an audience. It's a place to go when you've built your audience to monetize that audience.
I want to say I am genuinely thankful for you for correcting that, because the phrasing on that, you're right, was a little bit problematic.
Yeah.
So here's the better way to say it is, I don't want you to get disappointed if you do everything I just did or just said to do and you don't immediately grow 10%, because it's not what I was trying to get at is I was trying to save you from feeling disappointment, because there, as Brad said, you've got to build the audience first. And that's what I was trying to get at before you then try to monetize that audience. And so if you're on comic number 30 in your archive, if you're on month number 6 of your cartooning publicly, I just want you to maintain a proper expectation of what you can translate in terms of paying patrons. Is it possible that you have hit such a nerve that you're going to get amazing patronage right away? Yes. I would argue that that's less likely. So Brad is 100% correct to correct the way I was phrasing that. What I was trying to do was to set your expectations such that the time and the work have to go in first, and then you can expect, with time, growth in your Patreon. Yeah. Thank you, Brad. Yeah. I want to say thank you, Brad. Brad's a good man.
Try to be more careful in the future.
I am duly chastised, and I want to take a sip of my coffee, but as a penitence, I'm not going to have a sip of my coffee.
There you go. And I'll take that as sufficient penance. The only thing I'm going to add to what you said, being who I am, being the guy, and you know what I'm going to say, it's 2 words. It starts with an E and a C, and it is...
I love you, Dave. Oh, wait, nope. Oh, is this the wrong format? Is this the wrong format to say that,
That's the other
Brad?
show that we do that we haven't put up yet. That one's for much later, and it's not for Patreon.
That's amazing.
That's for when Grindr has their own social media.
All right, no, here's the fun part. Here's the fun part as a friend is that you're like, all right, it starts with 2 letters. It's a W and an F, and I'm like, I have no idea what's happening. All right. I first said it to you on the day your son was born. I have no idea what you're about to say, Brad. I wrote you a whole letter with these 2 words in it, Brad. I literally don't have any idea what you're about to say.
You know what they are. Exclusive content. If you want to get growth in Patreon. I'm surprising you with this? I feel like a broken record.
I didn't know that's where you were getting at. Oh, Lord above. Oh, man, that's amazing.
I feel like a broken record, but I'm telling you, if you want growth in Patreon, exclusive content. Find what your readers are willing to pay for and do that thing.
Yep, that is absolutely true. Exclusive content, and I would just put a little tag on that, early content, for me at least, because it's a story-based content, early content does help.
Yeah.
Which in a way is just continuing Brad's point. Early is another way of exclusive. So, to summarize, the 10% growth on Patreon, is it going to happen right away? No. But the takeaways that you can take from this are: prepare for your campaign, get the images ready, have another look at your tiers, get all that going. do a solid 30 days of mentioning it in polite and interesting, by the way, not just rote memorization ways where people's eyes can gloss over it. Every day, every couple of days, try to change up how you're pitching it so that it's new to them. And then see where you land after 30 days. Even if you're growing 1 or 2% a month, you'll be like, all right, time to do that again next month.
Yep. And here's one thing I'm going to add, and that is when you're doing your Patreon page, 2 things. I'm cheating. 1, keep those reward levels simple and make sure that you're pulling back on your reward levels so that you can put plenty of content into each one of them. I think the problem sometimes people get is they've got too many reward levels and then they don't have enough time to put a lot of stuff into each of the reward levels.
Yep.
So keep the reward levels simple. Make sure that you can put lots and lots of content because let's face it, the more content is in those reward levels, the more people are going to sign up. And when you're setting that Patreon page up, I want this to be your guiding phrase. This is what your potential patrons are asking themselves. What do I get for my money? There are people with limited resources, right? Even if it's $1, that you'll be surprised how people will hold on to that dollar. They want to spend their dollar wisely. You need to answer that question. What do I get for my money? Even at the $1 level, at the $5 level, at the $10 level, you need to express to them without a whole lot of, the one thing I don't like on a Patreon page is when I go to that reward tier and I see a lot of chatter. What do I get for my $1 reward? $1, you're such a wonderful person. I love you so much. You're making my dreams come true. And I've got to read through all of that before I get to what do I get for my money? Your reward tiers should be bullet lists. They should be that succinct and focused. What do you get?
Oh, thank God, I have bullet lists. Oh, I did something right in the Brad Geiger book. Oh, good.
Yes, bullet lists. And not a lot of chatter when you get to that. It's got to be $1. What do I get for $1? $5. What do I get for $5? Because that's the question your potential patrons are asking. What do I get for my money? And if you can answer that question at each level, I think you're also going to see growth over the next several months.
It's making me want to ask, what do I get for my friendship with Brad Geiger? I'm not sure what I get. I've never been given a bullet list of what I get.
Well, I'll give you a bullet list.
I get jokes about my looks. I get attacks. This is what.
I've got so many responses to that. None of them are appropriate.
I can see the joke percolating. So, Brad, I have a question that's not a $5 question. Do you mind if I ask you? This is actually a good question. I want to throw it out for both of us to tackle.
Yeah. Listen, I'm here for you. That's number 1 on the bullet list is I'm here for you.
Oh, look at that. Oh, boy. What smarminess. All right, here we go. So do you think, Brad, as artists, that we have a responsibility to critique other artists when they ask for it, either online or at comic conventions? Because I personally have never been comfortable with giving critiques. But it's this constant, I don't know how to say it, guilt that I feel that we are supposed to be giving critiques, and I don't like it. It's a basic, maybe it's a failing of my own personality, but I don't enjoy the act of telling another artist what they're doing wrong or what they're doing right or what they need to improve on. So I want to ask you, do we, as, for lack of a better phrase, established cartoonists have a responsibility to critique up-and-coming artists when they ask for it?
Yes, unequivocally yes, with 2 things that I think you need to keep in mind. Number 1, the operative phrase in there is when they ask for it. If somebody's directly coming to you and say, I really would like you to tell me what you think of this work. Right. You have a responsibility as someone who's put more time into your craft to help that person out. I look just back over my own development as a cartoonist, how many times I was genuinely helped out by someone who I said, hey, give me a couple tips. What am I doing? What am I doing right? What am I doing wrong? And that has been really, really helpful to get somebody. I didn't always agree with it, and it might have taken me a little bit of time to come around to realizing that they had a point, because I am obstinate.
Right.
But I that kind of thing is meaningful. But the operative word there and the operative phrase is when they ask for it. And the other thing is, I don't know that a critique has to be done in a sharp, pointed way. I think a lot of it comes from how you approach it as the person giving the critique. In other words, if you say your lettering stinks, that's not a great critique, right? That's not constructive. That's not helpful. But if you say, listen, having done lettering for the last several years, here's a few things that I'd like you to have on your radar. First off is the crossbar I rule. Second off is make sure there's a standard border inside your word balloons, right? Stuff like that. And if you offer that to someone, not in a you're doing terribly and I'm going to tell you, or in a in a pointed way, I think if you say and leave the door open for here's my thoughts, but I'm just one guy. And you're welcome to go out and gather opinions from other people who are also experienced in this field, and come up with your own ideas of how you want to do your work. I think that's much different than the standard critique that you have in your mind.
Well, I don't know how to summarize this other than to say I don't want to do it, Brad. I don't want to do it. I like kicking and screaming like a baby. I don't want to do it. I mean, you've been next to me at Comic-Cons when someone asked me to critique their work. You tell me, what is my standard look on my face when they ask me to?
You are in horror. You are in horror when someone's asking you to do this. Yeah, and that may just be your personality. I got to tell you, I don't have that. I don't have that problem because and I'm not okay. If I say that I really love talking about the craft of comics, it sounds like I'm saying that you don't, and I know that's not the case.
Oh God, no. I mean, no, not at all.
But I love, and I'm to the point that I read Twitter or Facebook, and I see people posting their comics. And I literally scream at the screen, please ask me what you're doing wrong. Because I see somebody posting a comic, and I just saw one today. He was so close to making a really good punchline, and he screwed it up in the second panel. And sometimes I'm the opposite of you. I have an overwhelming urge to approach that person and say, and by the way, I've done this actually a couple times. But always the first thing is that before I even say anything, I'll reach out to somebody and I'll say, would you like a unsolicited opinion on what you're doing? And know that it's a fair answer if you say no. But I'm looking at your stuff and I got some real thoughts, and they're bumbling out. And because I've been in the situation, and I don't know, but I think you've been in the situation where you got unsolicited advice from somebody out of thin air. I got an unsolicited message one day from someone who's not a accomplished artist. Let's put it that way, giving me art tips, and I grinded my teeth over that for weeks. It's like, how dare you? He might have been right. I got to go back and look at the email. He might have been right, but it was unsolicited, and it came from a source. If he would have given me writing advice, it would have been a different thing because he's a very good writer. If he would have done any number of things, I would have said great. But it was like in a field that it was like you shouldn't be talking about this. Unsolicited advice is really tricky.
Yeah.
But if they come up and ask you, I'll be honest with you, Dave, and I don't want to sound like I'm beating you up this episode. I am going to make the argument that you owe it to that person as someone who has walked this walk for 20 years now. And a younger person comes up with a spirit of openness. I think you owe it to that person.
Well, that's a totally fair response, and it's kind of what I expected you to say, and so I accept that. I guess we all have a duty to pay it forward and to sort of send down the ladder for the next generation.
Mm-hmm.
And if I'm being honest with what I've tried to do over the last, I don't know, decade, I have tried to do that in ways that let me do everything but have to give a critique. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. I did Webcomics Weekly with you guys. I did How to Make Webcomics with you guys. Yep. I did Comic Lab with you. I did Stripped with Fred as a documentary. I mean, a lot of stuff about, I've written master's theses about certain cartoonists that other academics can read. Like, I've tried to do everything that I can to promote the art of cartooning without having to say, your line work, it needs some work, and your lettering is subpar, and I find the joke delivery is not great here. Like, I don't... So, first of all, my read when the average person comes up at Comic-Con is that this is a terrible projection, perhaps, but I don't think they want an honest criticism. I think what they want is someone that they like or respect or think that they like and respect to go, you're doing great. What a great path you're on. Here's a pat on the back. Have a great day. Don't you think that that's kind of true for a percentage of people in their heart of hearts?
Yeah.
Like, I don't think people want to go, oh, gee, they don't want to walk up to one of the people that they read and go, oh, geez, what a hot piece of shit this is. Geez, who made this?
No, but again, it's all in the delivery. And number one, yes, they want a pat on the back, as do we all. We all need a little bit of encouragement.
No, I know. I'm not. Don't make me a horrible human being. I'm saying I want that
too.
No.
But okay, let me take this tact with you. So we're coming up in a world in which it's possible to reach out to a Dave Kellett and say, what do you think about my work? Or it's possible to walk up to a Erica Moen and say, hey, what do you think about how I'm drawing these characters? How do you think about what my writing? And take for a minute and make yourself a 20-year-old Dave Kellett and imagine that you could walk up to a Burke Breathed or a Bill Watterson with the same ease that these people can walk up to a Danielle Corsetto at a comic convention and get feedback. Wouldn't you crave that?
Oh, Brad, every time I email Watterson, every time, the thing that I want back from him is, Dave, you're doing amazing work. Oh, Dave, every dribble of creativity is a gem from you. Oh, Dave, it's like the one or two times where he's like, hey, I loved yesterday's Sheldon. I would be like, I'm walking on air for like the next 6 weeks. That's all I want. So that's why it may be me projecting onto other people that they're coming up at Comic-Con and they just want... Because it's a world of, like, for a lot of early stage creativity, you're putting things out into the world and you're getting back silence,
Yeah.
Or you're getting back less of a response than you want. So I get it that you just want to check in and make sure that you're on the right path. And I will say, and I hope you know this is the case, I hope you've seen this, if someone comes up to me and asks a technical question, man, those I'll answer all day long. Yeah. I will answer a technical question all day long.
Yes, you
will.
Like,
how did you make this mark? Or what technique did you use to do this? Or how do you find that which technique works better? Those I'll answer till the cows come home. It's when they hand over the stapled mini comic and at Comic-Con and it's just the hands are still outstretched with palms up as they pass it to you. And the eyes have a slight watering at the lower rim of the eyes.
The hands are shaking a little bit.
Yeah, they're shaking a little. They're like, Brad, what do you think of my comics? And like, how can you go, well, I got to tell you, your panel work really is rough. Your lettering, oh boy, that needs a lot of work.
Yeah.
I mean, do you do that?
Yeah. Okay, so here's a couple thoughts on that. Number one, I will try to ascertain very quickly how long they've been working in comics.
Oh, okay. Yep.
And then I will place that in a period of growth. And I'll say, okay, your panel work is not great, but you've only been doing this for a couple of years. And this is something that over the next year, I'd like you to focus on improving at. And listen, I have given some not vicious, but some very honest, frank critiques. And I will always put that into a time continuum and say, this is where you are now. And there's nothing that says that this is where you've got to stay.
Can I stop you for a second? So This is exactly one of my problems with doing critiques online or in Comic-Con, is that you ask them, where are you in your cartooning, right? Month 6, year 6, that kind of thing. But this is where an unsolicited critique request gets tricky, because a teacher has seen their progress over 6 months and knows the context of their art, knows the context of their life. And so it's a better and fairer critique of where they are as a person. And so it's harder for me, and maybe this is just because I'm untrained as a teacher of art, that I can't go, here's what you need to work on, here's the 6 things. Like, I need the context of their life. Like, oh, are you just getting out of college? Oh, do you have a lot of time to work on cartooning? Oh, you've been working at this for 2 decades and this is where you're at? Yikes. Yeah. All right. Like, I need that context. And I don't know that I can fairly give that contextualized critique in a 2-second meeting at Comic-Cons or something, Yeah.
Well, and here's the other. So having just argued the other side of this, there is one area that I kind of come around to where you're talking about. And that is, I also do paid comics consultations, right?
Okay.
What I've found doing those is I get really super, I drill down to a granular level, and I really talk about this stuff in a very frank way. And those people, and I have not always been complimentary, and those people that I've done consultations with really, really appreciate it, and I've seen the changes in their work.
Right.
When there's not that investment, if it's just walking up to somebody and saying, what do you think of my work? And then they say something that might not be complimentary, it's very easy for them to cast that away and write you off and say, well, he doesn't know what he's talking about, and walk away, unless there's a little bit of a investment in it. And then all of a sudden that becomes more solid. It becomes more important. So in that regard, like if somebody asks me, what do you think about what I'm doing? I will generally always give them some level of answer. When it gets to the point where they want to go granular, then I direct them to a consultation, because now I've got to spend more time on that, and now my time is worth money, and I've got I as much as I'd like to, I can't follow you down the rabbit hole. But the one thing that always gives me pause about doing like a comic convention critique is that, this person can easily just take what I said and walk away because they don't have an investment in it. And then I'm like, am I really making the best use of my time?
Well, really, so I can completely see that happening, because when someone's at the point where they're willing to pay for either a teacher or pay for a comic critique, what they're saying is, I have reached my current limit on what my self-editorializing eye can see, and I need help getting to the next level, right?
Yeah.
And so they're willing to pay either a teacher, an instructor, a comics, a consultant like yourself to help them get to break past that existing editorial eye. But another thing that I found with a lot of Comic-Cons is that someone comes up and they go, hey, give me your thoughts on this. And I give them my honest thoughts. And then they go, well, the reason for that is, and you go, well, I'm not here to argue with you about why you did it that way. You asked for my professional opinion. I gave it to you. Like, you don't have to justify it. Like, I there's no other way to say this than, like, you need to learn how to take a critique if you ask for it,
Yeah.
And so, like, if you don't give a compliment, then that opens up a whole nother thing. So I have just adopted a policy, and it's subconscious at this point, where it's just like, I say 3 nice things that are all honest about the work that is presented to me, and then it's have a nice day. Because I feel like most people, it's like that person that walks up to you at a Comic-Con and goes, how many years would I have to do this until I make a living at it? You know what I mean? And they haven't really given it the intense thought and that's an equivalent for most people that walk up to you at Comic-Con and go, what do you think?
Yeah.
Because really, what that question is, hey, I spent the last weekend working on this.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah.
It's like, okay, well, I'll give you, I don't know, you're doing great. There you go, champ. Have a great weekend,
Do you give him the little hair tussle that goes along with that? You're doing great, champ.
Well, yeah, because I feel like it's also, we live in a world where, I don't consider myself a great artist. I think my writing is stronger than my art, but anyway, I don't consider myself a great artist, so who the heck am I to critique someone? And then B, we live in a world where people who have self-admittedly not great art, XKCD or Dilbert or Pearls Before Swine, you can have a superstar career. So who am I to tell you that you can't make it in cartooning with the art style that you have, is one way of saying it,
Right,
Right. Like, let the market decide. Get out there and do the work. And in doing the work, and that's one of the things that I always try to promote with Comic Lab and other places, is that put the work out there and let the market decide. The market you can't hide good work. If it's good, it'll rise to the top no matter what you do, you know?
Well, I agree with you there.
But anyway, so every 5 years, so we come back on this critique question because I feel tremendous guilt. I don't know what it is that I'm. Maybe my heart is telling me I'm supposed to be critiquing people, but I just don't like it. I just don't enjoy critiquing another human being.
I think it's also your personality. I think you are not wired to be that person who says, I'm gonna stand in judgment of you for the next 5 minutes. You're not that. That's very much not who you are, and that doesn't mean that a good or a bad. It's just that's your mental space. That's your emotional nature. Is that you're not comfortable with that, and if you're not comfortable with that, you shouldn't do it.
Yeah. That's what I needed. I needed the dispensation from Brad to yeah, there we go. And now I'm out. I'm out, Brad. I'm out. I don't have to do it anymore. No, we'll check back in after Comic-Con because I know it's going to happen in San Diego. I'll make a note of who comes up and what they say and how they respond when I critique, because I can guarantee if I give genuine criticism that is honest, they'll be crestfallen. But if I give them 3 kind words, they'll go away going, "What a great Comic-Con it was!"
What a nice guy that. Well, yeah, you and what a nice person David is.
Maybe that's another thing. Maybe I just don't ever want anyone to think ill of me, I guess is another way. That could be.
Listen, if the person coming up with their mini comic looks anything like Fred Schroeder, my advice is to dive under the table.
I will make sure to pass that along to Fred. All right, so Brad, to finish us off this week, I have a challenge for both of us for next week.
A challenge?
And I have not told you about this beforehand. So I think you might enjoy this, though. And if you don't, we don't have to do it. But I think it might be fun to do this publicly. So when I left Mattel Toys in 2007, I made a 2-year plan, a 5-year plan, and a 10-year plan for my career.
Oof.
And it was what I wanted to have accomplished by 2 years, 5 years, and 10 years, right?
Yeah.
And in mapping that out, it was a great way to see, like, what am I doing right? What am I doing wrong? What do I need to improve on? What do I need to really improve on? And how, and most importantly, what's my roadmap to get there? What are the actionable steps that I need to do to make my income a third larger, or to make my output, a quarter larger, whatever it was. And so my challenge to you, and we can modify it however you would like to modify it, but for next week's show, do you want to both come back with either a 2, a 5, or a 10-year plan?
Oh, you know what? That sounds... The short answer is yes. And is it feasible to do a 2, a 5, and a 10-year plan?
We can do 2, 5, and 10, yes.
In other words, by 2 years, I want to be here. By 5 years, I want to be here. And over 10 years, this is the grand scheme.
Right. And it's good with 10 to shoot the moon, because one of my 10 was... I want to make a filmed project about comics.
Yeah.
This was in 2007 and ended up doing that in 2014. So, and there was 1 or 2 goals that I didn't do, that I didn't make in 2007. So, but it's fun to see. In fact, it might even be fun for me to pull out that old list.
Yeah.
I could pull that out.
That sounds good.
But anyway, do you want to do that for next week?
Yes.
2, 5, and 10-year goals?
Yes, I do. That sounds fantastic.
Do you want to set parameters on what the goals can be, or do you want to just leave it open-ended? It's either financial, creative, or...
No, I think it should be wide open. And your goals might be financial. My goals might be creative. It's gonna tell us... that's great. It's going to tell so much about where our focus is, and that might be something that needs to be adjusted too. Like you could say, Brad, you've got all these business goals, and maybe one of your goals could be to do something over here in writing, right?
Right.
So I'd say leave it open-ended.
And it would be fun to talk about how, I think this would be instructive to people too, to talk about how we plan to get to certain goals.
Yeah.
And then other ones would be like, well, this is my goal, but I actually don't know how I'm going to get there. And then we can talk about how we would get there. I think that might be fun.
That sounds awesome. No, I like this a lot.
When I set my 10-year goals in 2007, I would say that 80% of them was about how am I going to pay the bills, right?
Yeah.
And I would be interested to sit down and do the goals now and to say, like, how do I continue to pay the bills? No, I don't know. But it'll be fun to do. I think it'll be instructive. So good. I'm excited that you're willing to do that because I think that'll be fun to do. 2, 5, and 10-year goals next week. Or maybe should we give ourselves a little time? We'll do 2 weeks out. We'll do it from there, maybe?
That was my only thought. Let's give it a couple of episodes go by, and then we'll come up sometime in July and readdress this, because I might need a little bit more time.
That's totally fair. Well, on that note, I will end by mentioning our sponsor one more time. It's Ashley at ashleycomics.com. And Ashley is a comic about Ashley and her friends having fun, comical adventures in a world where fantasy often becomes reality. That's ashleycomics.com, this week's sponsor of Comic Lab.
You've been listening to Comic Lab, the show about making comics and making a living from comics.
Your hosts have been Brad Geiger, the editor of webcomics.com and the cartoonist of Evil Inc. at evil-comic.com.
And Dave Kellett, the co-director of Stripped and cartoonist of Sheldon at sheldoncomics.com and Drive at drivecomic.com.
And the Comic Lab theme song is used with permission from Andy Creighton at theworldrecord.net.
Comic Lab is made possible by your support on patreon.com/comiclab. So we'll go ahead and say that twice, patreon.com/comiclab.